My daughter said my cooking wasn't good enough for her wedding, so I took back my recipe and my money. This is how I learned to stand up for myself after 75 years of putting everyone else first. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The smell of cornbread and collard greens filled my kitchen as I wiped sweat from my brow. 75 years on this earth, 40 of them spent in this very restaurant, and my hands still moved with the same certainty they always had. Dorothy's Soul Kitchen didn't become an Atlanta institution by accident. It was built on recipes passed down from my great-grandmother, who learned to cook as a slave and turned those same skills into freedom for our family. "Miss Dorothy, phone call," Shanice called from the front. "It's Jessica." My heart fluttered at the mention of my only child. My Jessica, my everything. The reason I'd worked double shifts after her daddy William walked out when she was just 5. The reason I'd sold my mama's jewelry and put a second mortgage on our little house. "Baby girl," I said, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder while my hands kept working the dough. "How's my attorney doing today?" "I have news, Mama," she said, her voice higher than usual. "Richard proposed last night." The wooden spoon slipped from my hand. Jesus be praised, my baby's getting married. I'd met Richard Thornfield III a handful of times. Tall, light-skinned man with that plastic smile rich folks wear. His family owned half the real estate in downtown Atlanta. Old money, the kind of money that doesn't need to talk about it. "We're thinking 10 weeks from now," Jessica continued, "at the Thornfield estate. 10 weeks, Lord have mercy. That's soon," I laughed. "Well, I better start planning the menu right away. You know how long it takes to properly smoke those briskets you love." The silence on the other end stretched just a beat too long. "Actually, Mama, that's something I wanted to discuss with you in person. Can you come by tomorrow? Around noon?" A chill ran through me, despite the kitchen heat. I knew my daughter's voice, every note, every inflection. This wasn't her excited voice. This was her, "let's make this easy on Mama" voice. "Of course, baby," I said, keeping my tone light. "I'll bring those sweet potato tarts Richard liked so much last time." "No need to bring anything," she said quickly. Richard's having lunch delivered. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the aromas that had sustained our community for decades. Something wasn't right. The feeling gnawed at me as I closed up shop that night. At home, I pulled out the shoebox where I kept every milestone: Jessica's law school acceptance letter, her first business card, the newspaper clipping when she made junior partner. My fingers traced her graduation photo. I'd worked 18-hour days to put her through college, then law school. "You're investing in me, Mama," she'd said. "One day I'll make you proud." As I drifted to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. My dreams were troubled, filled with voices I couldn't quite make out, and faces that shifted from smile to sneer when I turned to look at them. The Thornfield estate sat like a white palace on a perfectly manicured hill. I parked my 15-year-old Buick between gleaming luxury cars and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I'd worn my good church dress and the pearl earrings William had given me before he turned into just another broken promise. Jessica opened the door before I could knock. She'd lost weight since I'd seen her last month, her cheekbones sharp against her skin. Her hair was straightened, not a curl in sight. "Mama," she said, hugging me briefly. "Come in. Richard's waiting in the sunroom." I followed her through rooms larger than my entire house, past paintings in heavy gold frames and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Richard stood when we entered, his handshake firm but brief. "Dorothy, good to see you." "Congratulations on your engagement," I said, smiling wide. "My Jessica deserves every happiness." "Indeed she does," he replied, already glancing at his watch. "Shall we sit?" We settled around a glass table overlooking gardens, so perfect they looked unreal. A young white woman in uniform served us tiny sandwiches and tea in cups so delicate I was afraid they'd shatter in my weathered hands. "So," I began, "about the wedding menu. I was thinking we could start with my famous deviled eggs, then for the main course." "Actually, Mama," Jessica interrupted, setting down her teacup with a sharp clink. "That's what we wanted to talk to you about." Richard cleared his throat. "We've hired Laurent Dubois for the catering." The name meant nothing to me. "He's French," Jessica added, as if that explained everything. "His restaurant has 3 Michelin stars." I don't understand," I said, my voice suddenly small. "I've catered every important event in our community for decades. I did Reverend Jackson's daughter's wedding just last month. Jessica's eyes wouldn't meet mine. This is different, Mama. Richard's family has certain expectations. What Jessica means, Richard interjected, scrolling through his phone, is that we're looking for something more sophisticated than home cooking. The word home cooking fell from his lips like something dirty. Your food is delicious, Mama, Jessica added quickly. It's just a bit too regional for this event. The tiny sandwich turned to ash in my mouth. Regional. Like my food, my heritage, my gift was some quaint local curiosity. I see, I said, setting down my napkin. And what role would you like me to play in your special day? Jessica brightened, relieved I wasn't making a scene. You'll be the mother of the bride. You'll sit at the front table and everything. How lovely, I said, though my heart was cracking down the middle. Later, standing in my kitchen at home, I pressed my palms against the counter until they hurt. I'd taught Jessica to roll biscuit dough in this kitchen. I'd shown her how to season a cast iron skillet with the same hands that had wiped away her tears and braided her hair. Now I wasn't good enough. I opened my recipe book, the pages yellowed and stained with decades of love poured onto plates. As I touched my great-grandmother's handwriting, I made myself a promise. I would never again let anyone make me feel small for carrying my ancestors' legacy. The boutique was all glass and chrome, nothing like the warm fabric stores where I'd sewn Jessica's Easter dresses as a child. I stood awkwardly among mannequins wearing outfits that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Mama, try this one, Jessica said, holding up a pale blue pantsuit. It's nice, I replied, checking the price tag when she wasn't looking. My heart nearly stopped. But honey, this is... Don't worry about the price. Jessica cut me off, pressing 2 crisp $100 bills into my hand. This should cover it. We need you looking appropriate when you meet Richard's family on Sunday. Appropriate. The word stung like vinegar in a paper cut. I have clothes, Jessica, I said quietly. I'm not some charity case. Her face softened momentarily. I know, Mama. I just want everything to be perfect. She looked at her watch. I've got to run to a meeting. Just use the money, okay? Consider it an early birthday gift. After she left, I returned the pantsuit to its rack and walked out, the money burning a hole in my purse. I ended up at Marlene's boutique instead, a black-owned shop I'd frequented for years. I found a dignified royal purple dress that actually fit my full figure. And it cost less than half what Jessica had given me. You look stunning, Dorothy, Marlene said, as I twirled in front of her mirror. What's the occasion? Meeting my future in-laws, I replied, straightening my shoulders. Jessica's marrying into the Thornfield family. Marlene's eyebrows shot up. Richard Thornfield? Child, be careful with those people. My cousin cleaned houses in their neighborhood for years. They smile in your face and talk about you the minute you leave the room. Sunday evening, I arrived at the Thornfield mansion precisely on time, wearing my purple dress and my grandmother's gold brooch. The house was even more imposing at night, lit up like a cruise ship against the dark sky. Jessica opened the door, her smile faltering as she took in my outfit. Oh, you didn't get the blue suit? This fits me better, I said simply, stepping inside. The dining room could have seated 20, but there were only 6 of us. Richard's parents, his younger brother, Jessica, Richard, and me. Patricia Thornfield, a rail-thin woman with platinum blonde hair, assessed me openly. So, Dorothy, she said after introductions, Jessica tells us you own a restaurant? Yes, Dorothy's Soul Kitchen. We've been serving Atlanta for 40 years. Not just a small operation, we've catered for mayors, celebrities, and half the weddings in our district. How quaint, Patricia smiled thinly. A little cooking business. It's not little, Jessica interjected. It's quite successful, actually. For a moment, I felt a surge of gratitude until she continued. But we're hoping Mama will sell soon and enjoy retirement. Maybe travel a bit, broaden her horizons. I nearly choked on my water. This was the first I'd heard of any such plan. Selling? I asked, setting down my glass. That restaurant is my life, Jessica. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Richard's father cleared his throat. Well, perhaps you could help at the wedding, Patricia suggested. Supervise the kitchen staff. I'm sure you have an eye for that sort of thing. Jessica beamed. That's a wonderful idea. Mama loves helping in kitchens. I sat there, invisible yet on display, as they discussed my life as if I weren't present. When dessert was served a tasteless lemon tart, I imagined what I could have prepared instead. My peach cobbler with bourbon vanilla ice cream that had once made a state senator propose marriage. "Excuse me," I said, rising suddenly. "Could someone point me to the restroom?" In the palatial bathroom, I gripped the marble countertop and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back had raised a daughter alone, built a business from nothing, and never asked for handouts. What was I doing here, letting these people reduce me to the help? I straightened my brooch and raised my chin. Whatever game Jessica was playing, I would not be a willing pawn. The diner was nearly empty when Jessica slid into the booth across from me. She'd suggested meeting here rather than at my restaurant, claiming it was more convenient. Translation: she didn't want to be seen by anyone who knew us. "Thanks for coming, Mama," she said, setting her designer bag on the cracked vinyl seat. "I wanted to talk to you about the wedding budget." I sipped my coffee, waiting. In the 45 years I'd known my daughter, she'd never opened a conversation about money unless she wanted some. "So," she continued, scrolling through her phone, "the total is coming to about $180,000. I nearly spit out my coffee. $180,000. Jesus be praised, child. That's more than my house is worth. Jessica's eyes darted around the empty diner. "Keep your voice down, Mama. And yes, that's actually on the reasonable side for a wedding of this caliber." "Caliber?" I repeated, tasting the word. "And I suppose you're telling me this because—" She set her phone down and reached for my hand. Her nails were perfectly manicured, not a speck of flour ever under them like mine. "I need help, Mama. About $45,000 worth of help." The room seemed to tilt sideways. $45,000? "Jessica, that's practically my entire retirement savings." "I know it's a lot," she said, squeezing my hand. "But you've always said you'd do anything for me. It's just a loan until Richard and I get settled. His trust fund doesn't mature for another year." I pulled my hand away. "What does Richard think about you asking me for this money?" A flicker of something embarrassment crossed her face. "He doesn't know I'm asking you. I told him I had some personal investments coming through." The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. She was ashamed of me, even as she asked for my money. "I'll give you $30,000, I said finally. "The other 15 stays in my account for restaurant emergencies." "But Mama, that's my offer." "Jessica, take it or leave it." She huffed, then nodded. "Fine, 30,000. I'll text you the account information." After she left, I sat in that booth for another hour, watching raindrops race down the window. I thought about all the birthdays when I'd worked extra shifts to buy Jessica the same shoes her classmates had, so she'd never feel less than. All the nights I'd fallen asleep at the kitchen table, calculating how to stretch our money until payday. Later that week, I ran into Evelyn Jackson at the grocery store. Her daughter had been Jessica's roommate in college. "Dorothy," she exclaimed, hugging me tight. "I hear wedding bells are ringing for Jessica. She must be over the moon." "She is," I smiled, though it felt stiff on my face. "Planning everything down to the last detail." Evelyn leaned closer. "I saw her and Richard at the country club last weekend. She was telling everyone about her personal investment portfolio that's funding half the wedding." "Never mentioned you once." "I thought that was strange, since we all know how you put her through school and everything." The bread I was holding crumbled slightly in my grip. "Well," I said carefully, "Jessica has always been independent." That night, I sat on my porch swing, watching fireflies dot the darkness. 40 years ago, I'd sat in this same spot, holding baby Jessica and promising her the world. Now she was ashamed to admit her mother, her hard-working, restaurant-owning mother, was helping her. The realization settled in my chest like a stone. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, what if the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for didn't deserve those sacrifices? Jessica canceled our lunch date for the 3rd time in 2 weeks, claiming she had a migraine. Something wasn't adding up. My daughter had been blessed with health like a horse her entire life, never even had the chicken pox that swept through her kindergarten class. "Rain check, Mama," she said over the phone, her voice muffled. "I'm just not feeling up to it. Should I bring over some soup? My chicken and dumplings always fixed you right up when you were little." "No," she said quickly. No thank you. Richard is taking care of me." After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, rolling a lemon back and forth on the counter. Jessica had never been a good liar, not to me anyway. When she was 12, she'd tried to forge my signature on a failed math test. I'd known immediately, not just from the wobbly handwriting, but from the way she couldn't meet my eyes for days afterward. When she finally agreed to meet the following week, I brought a casserole to her condo despite her protests. She opened the door wearing an oversized sweatshirt, though it was nearly 80 degrees outside. "You didn't need to bring food, Mama," she said, eyeing the dish warily. "Nonsense. You haven't been feeling well, and food is medicine." I pushed past her into the kitchen, noticing how she placed herself between me and the dining room table. "What's that you're working on?" "Just wedding stuff," she said, hurrying to gather papers from the table. As she reached across, her sweatshirt rode up slightly, revealing the waistband of her skirt, which was secured with a hair tie threaded through the buttonhole. My breath caught in my throat. I'd used the same trick during the early months of my pregnancy with Jessica, when my clothes had started getting tight, but I couldn't afford maternity wear yet. "Your condo looks lovely," I said casually, pretending not to notice. "Richard's been spending a lot of time here?" Jessica's hand went instinctively to her stomach before she caught herself. "Some. He's been busy with work. The development project in Buckhead is taking up most of his time." I nodded, filing away this information. "And how's Amanda doing? Still maid of honor?" At the mention of her best friend, Jessica's expression tightened. "She's fine. Very involved in the planning." "That's nice. It's important to have friends you can trust completely." That evening, I attended a charity auction at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, a ticket Jessica had originally purchased for herself, but given to me when she wasn't feeling well. I was admiring an orchid display when I overheard a familiar laugh. Richard Thornfield stood less than 20 feet away, his arm around a slender woman who was definitely not my daughter. They were partially hidden behind a large fern, but there was no mistaking the intimacy of their posture. The woman turned slightly, and I recognized Amanda, Jessica's best friend since law school. Their heads were close together, Richard whispering something that made Amanda giggle and playfully swat his chest. Then, when they thought no one was looking, his hand slid down to her lower back, pulling her against him in a way that friends certainly didn't touch each other. I stepped behind a column, my heart hammering. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Based on the signs I was seeing and my old-school knowledge of pregnancies, Jessica seemed to be about 10-12 weeks along, and here was Richard, clearly carrying on with her maid of honor. There was more to this story than met the eye. As I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached, one thing became crystal clear. My daughter was in trouble, and the man she was about to marry was not who she thought he was. What I didn't know yet was whether Jessica was a victim in all this, or if there was something deeper and more calculated happening before my eyes. The small office downtown wasn't much to look at, just a weathered door with Wilson Investigations stenciled on the frosted glass. Inside, Daryl Wilson sat behind a desk cluttered with files and coffee cups. He'd been a regular at my restaurant for 15 years, always ordering the same thing: chicken fried steak with extra gravy. "Miss Dorothy," he said, standing when I entered. "This is unexpected." I set my purse on the chair and got straight to the point. "I need to hire you, Daryl." Discreetly. His eyebrows shot up. "May I ask what this concerns?" "My daughter's fiancé. I have reason to believe he's being unfaithful." Daryl nodded. No judgment in his eyes. He'd seen it all in 20 years as a detective. "My standard rate is $800 a day plus expenses," he said. "But for you, $500? You've been feeding me too well for too long." I pulled an envelope from my purse. $5,000. 1 week of surveillance. I need to know everything: where he goes, who he sees, any financial irregularities you can dig up. Daryl whistled low. "This is serious business, Miss Dorothy. I'll work around the clock if needed. My daughter's life is serious business." After leaving Daryl's office, I made another stop at First National Bank, where Jerome Phillips had been manager for 3 decades. His mother and I had gone to high school together. "Dorothy," Jerome greeted me warmly. "What brings you in today? Everything okay with the restaurant accounts?" "The restaurant's fine, Jerome. It's a personal matter." I lowered my voice. "I'm worried about Jessica's engagement to Richard Thornfield. I'm hearing rumors about the family's finances." Jerome's smile faded. He glanced around before leaning forward. "I can't discuss specific clients, Dorothy. That would be unethical. But speaking generally, some of Atlanta's oldest families are finding it hard to maintain appearances these days. Properties that look impressive from the outside might be mortgaged to the hilt. People selling assets quietly while throwing extravagant parties. That's all I can say." I nodded slowly. "I appreciate the context, Jerome. I'd always had a head for business. You don't build and maintain a successful restaurant for 40 years without sharp instincts and analytical skills. I just never thought I'd need to apply those same skills to my own daughter's life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my bedroom, connecting invisible dots. Jessica pregnant, possibly uncertain about paternity. Richard carrying on with her best friend. The Thornfields potentially facing financial troubles. My $30,000 contribution to a wedding that might be nothing but a facade. When my phone rang at 6 a.m., I'd been awake for hours. "Miss Dorothy, it's Daryl. I know it's early, but you're going to want to see these right away." 2 hours later, I sat in Daryl's office, staring at photos spread across his desk. Richard and Amanda entering a hotel. Richard and Amanda at a restaurant, his hand on her thigh under the table. Richard and Amanda kissing in his car. "There's more," Daryl said, sliding over a folder. "I have contacts in real estate. The Thornfields have been quietly selling properties for the past year, 3 apartment buildings and a commercial lot. They've been keeping up appearances, but sources say they took a massive hit on a development deal that fell through last year." I closed the folder, my decision made. "Thank you, Daryl. You've been very thorough." "What will you do now?" he asked. I stood, straightening my jacket. "Now, I'm going to get a gym membership." Daryl looked confused. "A gym membership?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I believe it's time I had a conversation with my daughter's personal trainer." As I walked out into the bright morning sunlight, I felt something shifting inside me. A lifetime of putting others first was giving way to something new. Dorothy Washington had spent 75 years being a good woman, a good mother. Now it was time to be smart. "Breathe through it, Miss Dorothy," Marcus encouraged, as I completed my final rep. "That's how you build strength." I set the weights down, wiping sweat from my brow. 3 sessions with Marcus, Jessica's personal trainer, and I was already feeling muscles I didn't know I had. "You're a natural," he said, handing me a towel. "Not many of my clients your age push themselves this hard." "Well, I've got a wedding to look good for," I replied, taking a long drink of water. "My only daughter, you know." Marcus's smile flickered slightly at the mention of Jessica. "Yeah, I heard she's getting married." "Congratulations." "Thank you. She's been a client of yours for how long now?" "About 2 years," he said, recording something in his training app, "though she's been canceling a lot recently." I nodded sympathetically. "Wedding stress, I imagine." "When did the cancellation start?" "I worry about her taking care of herself with everything going on." Marcus thought for a moment. "I'd say about 12 weeks ago. She just stopped showing up regularly." "That's around when the engagement happened," I mused. "She must have been going through a lot." "Yeah," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "It was a difficult time for her." I caught something in his tone, hesitation, maybe guilt. "Oh? In what way?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Just, relationship stuff. She confided in me that she and Richard were having some problems. She was stressed about decisions." Jessica had mentioned relationship troubles with Richard to her trainer, but not to me. That stung, but it also gave me valuable information. "It's nice she had someone to talk to," I said carefully. "Jessica's always kept her feelings bottled up, even as a child." Marcus busied himself adjusting equipment. "I try to be there for all my clients. Sometimes people need more than just physical training, They need a friend." The way he avoided my eyes told me everything. There had been something between them, something more than trainer and client, more than friends. "Well, I'm glad she had your shoulder to lean on," I said, gathering my things. "She doesn't always make the best choices when she's upset." Marcus looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing specific," I said, waving dismissively. "Just a mother's observation. She's always been impulsive when emotional, doing things she later regrets." As I walked to my car, I could feel Marcus watching me, the seeds of doubt now firmly planted in his mind. The timing matched perfectly. Jessica's pregnancy was approximately 10 to 12 weeks along, right when she'd been having problems with Richard and spending extra time with her attentive, muscular trainer. At home, I sat on my porch swing, plotting my next moves like a chess player. All the pieces were in position. I just needed to wait for the right moment to act. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Jessica. "Mama," she said, her voice tense, "I need you to come to the venue tomorrow. The wedding planner wants to discuss the seating chart, and I need you there." "Of course, baby. What time?" 2 o'clock. "And Mama? Wear something professional." The line went dead before I could respond. The next day, I arrived at the Thornfield estate precisely at 2, wearing a tailored black dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. My recent training sessions with Marcus had already started to show results. My posture was better, my confidence higher. Jessica was in the garden with a thin white woman clutching a tablet. Richard was nowhere to be seen. "Mama, this is Vanessa, our wedding planner," Jessica said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We're finalizing the family table arrangements." "Lovely to meet you," I said, shaking Vanessa's hand firmly. "So, Mrs. Washington," Vanessa began. "Ms. Washington," I corrected. "I've been divorced for 40 years. Of course, my apologies. We're placing you at table 1 with the immediate family. Will you be bringing a +1? Before I could answer, Jessica cut in. "Mama will be coming alone. She's not seeing anyone." I smiled. "Actually, I was thinking of inviting Jerome Phillips." "You remember him, Jessica, the bank manager? We've been having dinner occasionally." Jessica's eyes widened in shock. "You're dating Jerome? Since when?" "I wouldn't call it dating exactly," I said smoothly, "but we enjoy each other's company. He's been very informative." I watched as the implications registered on Jessica's face. Jerome knew about banking matters. I knew people were talking about the Thornfields' finances. For the first time in this entire wedding process, I saw fear in my daughter's eyes. Good. Jessica stormed into my restaurant at 10 p.m., well after closing time. I was alone in the kitchen, prepping dough for tomorrow's biscuits. She didn't bother with a greeting. "What exactly are you doing, Mama?" I continued kneading, my hands steady. "Making biscuits, same as I've done for 40 years. That's not what I mean, and you know it." She slammed her purse on the counter. "First the gym membership, then these clothes. Now suddenly you're friends with Jerome Phillips? What game are you playing?" I looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "No game, Jessica. Just living my life. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to broaden my horizons?" Her face flushed. "Don't throw my words back at me. Richard told me you've been asking questions about his family's businesses. That stops now." I wiped flour from my hands and straightened to my full height. "Or what, Jessica?" The question hung in the air between us. For a moment, my daughter looked startled, like a child who'd never considered her threats might be hollow. "I'm trying to protect you," she said finally, her voice softening. "You don't understand how these people operate." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied. "Question is, do you?" I turned to the sink to wash my hands, giving her a moment to compose herself. When I faced her again, I noticed how she unconsciously cradled her stomach, a mother's gesture as old as time. "When were you planning to tell me about the baby?" I asked quietly. All the color drained from her face. "How did you—" "I raised you, Jessica. You think I don't know the signs? The cancellations, the loose clothes, the sudden aversion to smells? I knew before you did with the chicken pox. Remember?" She sank onto a stool, suddenly looking very young and very scared. "Richard doesn't know yet. I've been waiting for the right time." "And is Richard the father?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about? Of course he's—" She stopped abruptly, the lie dying on her lips. "You're not sure, are you?" I pressed. "It could be Marcus." Jessica's face crumpled. "How do you know about Marcus?" "Same way I know about Richard and Amanda." She froze. "What about Richard and Amanda?" I crossed the kitchen to my office and returned with an envelope, sliding it across the counter. Jessica opened it with trembling fingers, gasping as she flipped through the photos of her fiancé and best friend in various compromising positions. "No," she whispered, "this can't be right." "It's right, baby girl. I paid good money to make sure." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "You had him followed? How could you do that to me?" The accusation in her voice ignited something in my chest. "How could I? How could you? Lying to me, using me for money, being ashamed of me in front of those people who look down their noses at everything I built for you." "You don't understand," she shouted. Standing so abruptly, the stool clattered to the floor. "With Richard, I have security, status, a future where I don't have to scrape and struggle like you did." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So that's what all my sacrifices taught you? That my life, the life that put food in your mouth and clothes on your back, was something to be ashamed of? Something to escape? You're so limited," she cried, gesturing wildly around the kitchen. "Stuck in this little world while I'm trying to build something bigger. You're going to embarrass me in front of everyone at this wedding." The moment hung suspended between us, her cruel words echoing off the stainless steel surfaces. I could see in her eyes that she knew she'd gone too far, but it was too late to take it back. I walked to the door and held it open. Go home, Jessica. Think about who you've become and whether that person deserves all the people you're using. Mama, go. Now. After she left, I locked the door and turned out the lights. In the darkness of my kitchen, the heart of everything I'd built, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not for the daughter who just left, but for the daughter I thought I'd raised. When the tears finally stopped, I stood and straightened my shoulders. Dorothy Washington hadn't gotten where she was by falling apart when things got tough. It was time for phase 2. Looking good, Miss Dorothy, Marcus called as I finished my morning workout. 2 weeks of training had transformed not just my body, but my presence. I stood taller, moved with more confidence. Thank you, Marcus. I feel stronger every day. He handed me a towel. Mind if I ask you something? Has Jessica mentioned me lately? I took my time wiping my face, considering my words carefully. Not specifically. Is there something she should be mentioning? Marcus shifted his weight nervously. No, just wondering how she's doing with the wedding coming up. Truthfully? I met his eyes directly. I worry about her. She doesn't look well. She's hiding something, I can tell. What do you mean, not well? Concern etched across his features. I lowered my voice. A mother knows when her child isn't right. Jessica's making decisions now that will affect the rest of her life. Sometimes I wonder if she's thought everything through. What kind of decisions? The kind you can't take back, I said cryptically. Marcus, can I give you some advice? Sometimes we learn important things too late. When that happens, a responsible person has to step up, even when it's difficult. His brow furrowed. Miss Dorothy, are you trying to tell me something? I'm just saying life has a way of bringing truth to light. One way or another. Better to face it head on than be blindsided. I gathered my things, leaving him standing there, clearly unsettled. The seed was planted. Now to nurture it. That afternoon, I had lunch with Evelyn Jackson at Marlene's Tea Room, a popular spot for the church ladies and community matriarchs. I made sure to arrive early and request a table near the center of the room. Dorothy, Evelyn exclaimed, embracing me. You look amazing. What's your secret? Just taking better care of myself, I smiled. With the wedding coming up, I want to look my best. We ordered, and then I leaned forward confidentially. Evelyn, can I share something with you? In strictest confidence? Evelyn nodded eagerly. In our circle, strictest confidence meant it would be all over the community by sundown, which was exactly what I wanted. I'm concerned about the Thornfield family situation, I said, lowering my voice just enough that the nearby tables would have to strain to hear. Word is, they're not as financially stable as everyone believes. They're selling properties quietly while throwing lavish parties to keep up appearances. Evelyn's eyes widened. No, and Jessica's marrying into this mess? I nodded solemnly. And that's not all. Richard has quite a history with women. Before Jessica, he was engaged twice, both called off suddenly. By the time our dessert arrived, I'd carefully planted the information I wanted circulating. The Thornfields' financial troubles, Richard's past infidelities, all documented by Daryl, and subtle hints about Jessica not looking well lately. As I predicted, Evelyn's phone was buzzing with texts before we even paid the bill. 2 days later, I was working in my restaurant when Shanice called from the front. Miss Dorothy, there's a young man here asking for you. Says it's important. Marcus stood awkwardly by the hostess stand, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Miss Dorothy, can we talk? Privately? I led him to my office and closed the door. What's on your mind, Marcus? He paced the small space like a caged animal. I can't stop thinking about what you said. About Jessica not being well. About facing things head on. And I did something with Jessica. With something that wasn't professional. He ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. It was just once, about 12 weeks ago. She was upset about something with Richard, and one thing led to another. I kept my expression neutral. I see. The thing is, now I'm hearing she's not well, and the timing. I need to know if she's pregnant. If it's mine, I have to take responsibility. I regarded him thoughtfully. Marcus was a good man caught in my daughter's web, just as I had been. I can't confirm or deny anything about Jessica's condition. That's for her to discuss with you. But I believe in facing truth, however uncomfortable. He nodded, determination replacing anxiety on his face. You're right. I need to talk to her directly. Thank you, Miss Dorothy. After he left, I checked my watch. The rehearsal dinner was in 3 days. All my pieces were in position. Now I just needed to wait for the inevitable collision. That evening, I received a text from Jessica. "What have you been saying to people?" Richard's mother heard rumors about their finances. "Fix this." I didn't respond. Some lessons couldn't be taught. They had to be experienced. The next morning, I stood in my kitchen preparing for the day's service, feeling a strange calm. For decades, I'd protected Jessica from consequences, cleared her path, made everything easier. Now I was doing the hardest thing a mother could do, letting truth have its way. The dominoes were falling, one by one. All I had to do was wait. The Thornfield estate was transformed for the rehearsal, white tents gleaming in the late afternoon sun. I arrived deliberately early, parking my newly detailed car near the main entrance. The Dorothy who pulled up wasn't the same woman who had visited weeks earlier, meekly accepting scraps of respect. This Dorothy wore a custom-tailored red dress that hugged every curve, her silver locks swept up elegantly, gold earrings catching the light. Heads turned as I walked confidently across the lawn, spine straight, chin high. Jessica hurried over, tension radiating from her. "Mama, you're early, and you're wearing red?" "I've always looked good in bold colors," I replied calmly. "Your daddy used to say red was my power color." She glanced nervously toward a cluster of thornfields. "Listen, some strange rumors have been circulating. Richard's parents are asking questions about our finances. Did you say something to someone?" "I have many conversations with many people." "Jessica, I can't control what others discuss." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't a game, Mama. You need to—" "Jessica!" A male voice interrupted us. Marcus stood a few feet away, his expression determined. "We need to talk, now." Color drained from Jessica's face. "Marcus, this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time," he insisted. "I've been calling and texting for 2 days. You can't keep avoiding this conversation." I stepped back. "I'll leave you two to chat." As I walked away, I heard Jessica hissing, "Lower your voice. People will hear you." I mingled smoothly with the early arrivals, exchanging pleasantries and compliments. When Amanda entered, looking nervous in a pale pink dress, I approached her with a warm smile. "Amanda, darling, you look lovely." She blinked rapidly. "Thank you, Ms. Washington. You look different." "Just embracing change," I said. "Speaking of which, I understand you and Richard have become quite close during the planning process." Her smile froze. "We've all been working hard to make this perfect for Jessica." "Indeed, so dedicated." I touched her arm gently. "It's wonderful that Jessica has such loyal friends." I left her standing there, uncertainty clouding her features. Across the lawn, I could see Jessica and Marcus in heated conversation, her gestures becoming increasingly agitated. Richard was by the bar, checking his watch impatiently. Patricia Thornfield approached, her smile tight. "Dorothy, how vibrant you look today." "Thank you, Patricia. I'm feeling quite vibrant these days. By the way, I noticed some of the downtown Thornfield properties have new ownership signs. I hope everything's all right with the family business." Alarm flashed briefly in her eyes. "Everything's fine, just routine business diversification." "Of course, though in my experience, nothing involving millions of dollars is ever routine." I excused myself, leaving Patricia flustered. My next stop was Richard, who was now on his second scotch. "Dorothy," he nodded curtly, "have you seen Jessica? We're supposed to be starting soon. She's having an important conversation with Marcus, her trainer." I added unnecessarily. "They seem to have a lot to discuss." Richard frowned. "What could possibly be so important right now?" "Oh, you know how these things go. Sometimes life-changing information can't wait for convenient timing." As I walked away, I glanced back to see Richard watching Jessica and Marcus with newfound suspicion. The tension in the air was palpable now, a storm gathering strength. I positioned myself strategically as Amanda approached Richard, touching his arm in that familiar way that crossed professional boundaries. From my vantage point, I could see Jessica notice the gesture, her already tense conversation with Marcus momentarily interrupted. The wedding planner began calling everyone to their positions, but the carefully orchestrated rehearsal was already derailing. Jessica broke away from Marcus, who followed her determinedly. Amanda hovered anxiously near Richard, who was now watching Jessica with narrowed eyes. "Is everything all right?" Patricia asked loudly as Jessica tried to slip past her. "Fine, just a small issue to resolve," Jessica replied tersely. "It's not small," Marcus interjected. "We need to finish this conversation." "Not now," Jessica gritted through clenched teeth. "Yes, now. Marcus insisted. "If you're pregnant, I have a right to know if it might be mine." The words rang out across the suddenly silent gathering. Faces froze in various expressions of shock. Richard's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the stone patio. "Pregnant?" he echoed. "What the hell is he talking about, Jessica?" Amanda stepped forward. "Richard, maybe we should—" "We should what?" Richard snapped, turning on her. "Did you know about this?" I didn't," Amanda stammered. "Don't lie to me too," Richard hissed. "I've had enough secrets in this relationship." Jessica's composure finally cracked. "You're talking about secrets? What about you and Amanda? Don't think I haven't noticed." Chaos erupted as multiple revelations collided at once. I stood quietly amidst the storm, watching years of deception unravel in minutes. Patricia Thornfield collapsed dramatically into a chair. Richard Sr. began damage control with nearby guests. Amanda burst into tears while Richard and Jessica screamed accusations at each other. Through it all, I remained still, the calm eye of a hurricane I had carefully cultivated. When Richard finally stormed off, followed by a sobbing Amanda, and Jessica sank to the ground with her head in her hands, I knew my work was done. The wedding was over before it began. 3 days after the implosion at the rehearsal dinner, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I was already up, kneading dough for the day's biscuits. Some habits don't change, even when your world does. Jessica stood on my porch, eyes puffy and red, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, a far cry from her usual polished appearance. Without a word, I stepped aside to let her in. She sat heavily at my kitchen table, watching me work the dough. "The wedding's off," she said finally, her voice rough from crying. I figured as much. Richard was sleeping with Amanda for months. She claims she thought he was going to leave me for her. Jessica laughed bitterly. Meanwhile, he was just using both of us. The Thornfields are practically bankrupt. The only reason he proposed was to get access to my salary and connections. I continued working silently, letting her talk. "The test confirmed it," she continued, touching her stomach lightly. "The baby is Marcus's. One stupid night 12 weeks ago when Richard and I had a fight." Her voice broke. "What am I going to do, Mama? Everything's ruined." I dusted flour from my hands and sat across from her. "Not everything, just the things that weren't real to begin with." Jessica looked up, anger flashing through her grief. "You knew, didn't you? About all of it. You made this happen." "I didn't make anything happen that wasn't already in motion, Jessica. I just stopped protecting you from the truth." "By humiliating me in front of everyone?" she demanded. "No, by letting your own choices play out to their natural conclusion." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "You rejected me, Jessica. You rejected everything I built, everything I taught you. You used me for money while being ashamed to admit where it came from. So, this was revenge?" Tears streamed down her face. "This was a lesson, baby girl. The hardest one I've ever had to teach you." We sat in silence, the weight of years of unspoken tensions between us. Outside, morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting patterns on the worn table where I'd taught Jessica to roll her first biscuit. "What happens now?" she asked finally, her voice small. "That depends on you. The Thornfields are demanding their money back, their part of the wedding deposits. I don't have it. Most of it's gone, and I used your money for the venue and flowers." I nodded. "I figured as much. I've already spoken to the vendors. They're returning $25,000 to me directly." Jessica's head snapped up. "You went behind my back again?" "I protected my investment," I corrected. "I had copies of all the payment receipts showing the money came from my account. The venue manager has known me for 20 years. I catered his daughter's quinceañera era. The other $5,000 I'm keeping as payment for the education you clearly needed. And what am I supposed to live on? I've taken unpaid leave for the wedding, and I'm pregnant with a personal trainer's baby." I regarded my daughter, this stranger I'd raised, who had somehow lost her way so completely. "You have options, Jessica. You always have. You can continue trying to be someone you're not, chasing approval from people who don't value you. Or you can remember who you really are, who I raised you to be." "And who is that?" she asked bitterly. "My daughter, a woman strong enough to rebuild from ashes, a woman who knows the value of honest work and real relationships." I stood, returning to my dough. "I need an assistant manager at the restaurant. The pay's not what you're used to, but the hours are flexible, and there's health insurance." Jessica stared at me in disbelief. "You want me to work for you? In the restaurant I'm too limited to appreciate? I want you to work for yourself, to remember what matters. The position is open if you want it. If not, Those are your choices to make. She rose abruptly. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, I said, my hands never stopping their work. The door's always open, just like it was when you were 5 and 10 and 20. After she left, I finished my biscuits and opened the restaurant as usual. Life goes on, even on days when hearts are breaking and remaking themselves. That evening, as I closed up shop, Marcus stopped by. "Miss Dorothy," he said, looking nervous, "I wanted to thank you for everything. I've talked with Jessica. I'm going to be there for the baby, whatever she decides about us." I squeezed his arm. "That's what responsible people do, Marcus. They face truth and step up." As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. I hadn't just reclaimed my money, I'd reclaimed my power, my dignity, and maybe, just maybe, started the process of reclaiming my daughter too. The recipe for healing would take time, just like the best dishes in my kitchen, but I had all the ingredients I needed. 9 months later, I stood in the hospital room, cradling my newborn grandson. Martin Luther Washington weighed 8 pounds, 3 ounces, with a head full of curls and his mother's determined chin. "He's got your eyes, Mama," Jessica said from the bed, exhaustion and wonder mingling in her voice. "That's the Washington look," I replied, gently rocking the sleeping bundle. "Strong eyes that see the truth." Marcus entered, carrying coffee for both of us. Over the past months, he'd proven himself to be everything Richard wasn't: honest, hard-working, and genuinely caring. He and Jessica weren't rushing into romance, focusing instead on co-parenting and rebuilding their individual lives. "The nurse says they'll discharge you tomorrow if everything looks good," he told Jessica, setting the coffee on her bedside table. She nodded, then glanced at the clock. "Mama, don't you need to get to the restaurant? The Sunday brunch crowd will be starting soon." "Shanice has it handled," I said, still mesmerized by my grandson's perfect features. "Some things are more important than business." Jessica smiled faintly. "That's not what you taught me when I was growing up. Maybe I had things to learn too." The last 9 months had transformed both of us. Jessica had reluctantly accepted the assistant manager position at Dorothy's Soul Kitchen, starting with basic office work while learning the business operations. Initially, she'd approached it as temporary embarrassment punishment for her failed wedding and life choices. But something unexpected happened. As weeks passed, Jessica's natural business acumen emerged. She streamlined our accounting system, created a social media presence that brought in younger customers, and negotiated better terms with suppliers. The restaurant's profits increased by 20% in 6 months. More importantly, she reconnected with the community that had always supported us. The same church ladies who had witnessed her humiliation welcomed her back without judgment, bringing baby gifts and wisdom about motherhood. Our community had always valued redemption and second chances. They'd seen too many hard times themselves to hold grudges against someone genuinely trying to make amends. "I've been thinking," Jessica said, interrupting my thoughts, "about the expansion idea." I raised an eyebrow. "The second location downtown?" She nodded. "The numbers make sense, and that space on Auburn Avenue is perfect. Historical district, tourists, business lunch crowd. We could do a soft opening by summer if we move quickly." "We?" I questioned. Jessica met my eyes directly. "I'd like to make this partnership official, Mama. 50-50. I'll handle the business side. You maintain quality control and recipe development. Dorothy and Jessica's Soul Kitchen." My heart swelled. This wasn't the future I'd imagined. When Jessica was growing up, I'd always pictured her in a corner office with a view, not rolling up her sleeves in our family business. But somehow, this felt more right, more true. "I'd be honored," I said simply. Later that evening, after Jessica had fallen asleep and Marcus had gone home to rest before his next shift, I sat alone with my grandson in the quiet hospital room. "Let me tell you something, little man," I whispered. "Life doesn't always go how you plan it. Sometimes the best ingredients make the worst combination, and sometimes what looks like a ruined dish turns into something better than you ever imagined." I thought about the journey of the past year, the humiliation, the betrayal, the hard choices. I'd started out seeking justice, maybe even revenge, but what I'd found was redemption not just for Jessica, but for myself too. For decades, I'd measured my worth by my daughter's achievements, her approval of me. I'd accepted her shame about my work because part of me believed I should be ashamed too. No more. Dorothy Mae Washington had built something valuable with her own hands. My food wasn't just good enough, it was excellent. a legacy worth preserving and expanding. As for Richard, I heard through community gossip that he'd moved to Chicago after the scandal, his reputation in Atlanta irreparably damaged. The Thornfields had eventually sold their mansion and downsized to a modest 5-bedroom home in the suburbs. Sometimes karma doesn't need any help at all. 6 weeks later, we christened little Martin at my church, the same place where I'd christened Jessica 45 years earlier. Afterward, we hosted a celebration at the restaurant, the same community that had witnessed our fall now celebrating our rebirth. As I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and serving plates of my famous fried chicken, I caught sight of Jessica behind the counter. She was showing Martin to Reverend Jackson, pride evident in her stance and voice. "He's got the Washington spirit," I heard her say. "Strong and resilient, just like his grandmother. One day, he'll be running this place too." I smiled to myself, continuing my rounds. Sometimes the best recipes are the ones that survive being broken apart and put back together. They're never quite the same, but often they're better, richer, more complex, more authentic, just like us. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your journey might inspire another queen.